The cursed day the world experienced hell, the 1200s BC, the most magnificent, flawless, and wealthiest era the world had ever witnessed. The magnificent empires rising around the Mediterranean were not merely made of walls and earth. The Egyptian, Hittite, Assyrian, and Mycenaean civilizations ruled the world as the superpowers of their time. There were infinitely long monumental palaces, gold-gilded temples, and a colossal bureaucratic network woven with complex diplomatic correspondence. Not only kings, but also merchants were the cornerstones of this era. A ship setting sail from Crete would first anchor in Anatolia, then load up on Cyprus's copper and head to Egypt. Bronze, born from that unique fusion of copper and tin, was the greatest weapon, the insurance, and the currency of these civilizations. The era was, in every sense of the word, an age of ancient globalization and progress. Humanity was at the pinnacle of civilization, believing this golden age would never end. That is, until those dark decades that even history books tremble to write about. Imagine everything collapsing like a sandcastle overnight, in a matter of minutes. This is not the story of an ordinary war or a fight for the throne. This is the story of the colossal collapse of a flawlessly functioning system, a collapse that horrifies historians even today. The world calls it the Bronze Age collapse. It was such a bloody, such an unprecedented destruction that massive empires toppled like dominoes. Majestic cities that had stood for centuries surrendered to the flames. Thousands of years of accumulated knowledge, experience, trade routes, and international relations vanished in an instant. The world suffered such a massive trauma that during the dark 400 years following this disaster, it completely forgot how to read, write, and create art. Civilization had lost its memory. So, who brought upon this apocalypse? Who brought these invincible armies to their knees and leveled walls deemed insurmountable? According to the records, Egyptian pharaoh Ramses III had engraved on the walls of the Medinet Habu temple. They appeared suddenly on the horizon. No one knew where they came from, their names, which gods they worshipped, or what language they spoke. The Egyptians didn't know what to call them, leaving history with that infamous, terrifying name, the Sea Peoples. The Sea Peoples did not conform to any military order or tactic known until then. This new enemy was utterly unpredictable. With their long swords, light armor, and ruthless tactics, they completely subjugated the battlefields. They had ignited the greatest infantry revolution in military history, advancing at an unbelievable speed as they did so. The Hittite Empire was the sole military superpower of its time. This empire, which masterfully wielded iron weapons and possessed unstoppable chariots, practically evaporated in the face of the Sea Peoples and the rebellions brought on by starvation. Their capital, Hattusa, suffered one of the most ruthless sackings in history and was completely obliterated. The magnificent Hittite civilization was wiped off the stage of history entirely, never to return. Not only the Hittites, but also Ugarit, the wealthiest city of the era, was struck by this devastation. When the enemy was at the gates, Amurapai, the king of Ugarit, sent out a desperate plea for help to neighboring kingdoms. Those words, carved onto a clay tablet, were the final cry of a civilization. Enemy ships have arrived. My cities have burned. My people are dead. All my soldiers are far away. My country is defenseless. Please, save me. Those words, that cry for help, never reached its destination. The city was razed to the ground, and the tablet waited to be found amidst the baked ruins for exactly 3,000 years. However, the Sea Peoples didn't just come to fight. There is a terrifying detail that stands out in Egyptian reliefs. Behind the warriors were ox carts filled with women, children, and the elderly. They were not merely a savage invading army. They were a colossal wave of millions of refugees fleeing an unprecedented disaster in their own lands, trampling even their closest kin without hesitation in a desperate bid for survival. Egypt managed to stop them in the Nile Delta by fighting the first great naval battle in history. Yet, Egypt was so wounded and weakened that it could never again return to those legendary, feared days of the pharaohs. Still, the ultimate truth was far more horrifying than it appeared. Science and archaeology prove that this colossal collapse cannot be attributed solely to the wars of mysterious sailors. This was a disaster, perhaps titled "The Tragic End of the Greatest," where nature itself was involved. Nature had officially declared war on everyone. Years of climate change and severe droughts caused harvests to dry up completely. When famine arrived at the gates of majestic palaces, the people lost their faith and loyalty to their kings and their gods. Mass migrations began due to the drought. The sea peoples were, in fact, the result of this climatic desperation. Simultaneously, decades of earthquakes in the eastern Mediterranean destroyed massive cities one by one. This event instantly ended international trade, which was the era's sole source of livelihood and trade network. To make bronze, they needed copper from Cyprus and tin coming all the way from modern-day Afghanistan. When routes were occupied by rebels and ports burned down, the tin trade ceased. If there was no tin, there was no bronze. Without bronze, weapons could not be forged, fields could not be plowed, and the economy could not function. This flawlessly operating system was, in reality, extremely fragile due to its sheer complexity. When the main pillar of the system collapsed, the entire structure came crashing down on humanity within days. The Bronze Age collapse reveals to us the most terrifying, the most ruthless, and the most relevant truth of history. Perhaps the real question we need to ask is this: in our world, churning with climate crises, pandemics, and economic collapses, when our own sea peoples come to invade, will our skyscrapers, stock markets, and vast digital realm be enough to save us? Or is history silently biding its time to write that familiar, merciless repetition once again?